And, you know, as a former professional athlete myself, there's a lot that I can relate to in what Kwame Brown has been saying, because as athletes, we see it all the time. And there is a level of conditioning in how we are trained to handle the media that kind of holds us back from actually going and speaking and setting the record straight right then and there during our careers. It's not something that is looked upon in a very gracious way, because it brings a distraction to that team. It brings a distraction to the environment, and that is counterproductive to the team sport process in many ways. But for the individual, being able to step up and set the record straight for a lot of these people who don't understand the dynamics behind the scenes, that is vastly important too. That's vastly important to holding on to your dignity, to actually expressing the fact that a lot of these people don't understand the kind of work that you do put in for your craft. And, you know, they're doing a lot of things for the purposes of entertainment, which they don't always realize can be damaging to a player, both in their career and after their career. Who better to speak on this? Who better to speak about him and speak about his situation than his teammates? I came across this video last night. Washington Wizards Jahadi White, Chris Whitney, Tyrone Nesby, they spoke with Eaton Thomas. These are all teammates who were with the Washington Wizards during the time that Kwame Brown and Michael Jordan were with the team, Doug Collins with the team. And it's a true peek behind the veil. It's truly a peek behind the veil. This is as real as it will get for people who have never been in, obviously, the professional sports arena, who haven't been, athletes themselves. This is real shit, for lack of a better word. This is real things that these guys are talking about that I really do believe, it's something that we all should take a look at. And it's definitely something that really does just bolster everything that Kwame's been saying.
I was going to stay out of the whole thing. Wasn't going to comment on it. Wasn't going to say anything. Just kind of watch from the sidelines like everybody else. And then Kwame mentioned my name in one of the videos. I don't know if y'all saw. And he was talking about how his experience in Washington, D.C., his experience with the Wizards. And it's interesting because after he said that, and he said, you can ask the time, he'll tell you. And sure enough, my phone was ringing off the hook with people trying to verify what he was saying. And it's interesting because a lot of people, even now, they don't know everything that was going on in the atmosphere. You know what I mean? They just look at Kwame, they say, oh, he didn't pan out, number one pick, call him a bust, everything like that. And I would always be like, well, there's a whole lot more to this story than that. Like, y'all are missing a whole lot of parts. So I said, okay, well, why don't I just invite some guys that were there, that were on the Wizards, and we all talk about it. You know what I mean? And all kind of paint the correct picture of what was going on during our days in DC. Because it was a difficult situation. I'm gonna be honest with you, Jahai. Let me start with you. Because what was your assessment of everything? First of all, when MJ came out of retirement, just the whole scene.
And just to stop right there real quick, I think this is a perfect setup for exactly where eyes should be looking when it comes to talking about this situation as a whole. Michael Jordan was coming out of retirement. He was signed with the Washington Wizards. Michael Jordan was effectively a player coach. And, the media really jumped on this situation and talked about, I remember when this happened. I remember this. The media really talked about this as like some innovative, like truly groundbreaking, move that Jordan was making, coming back to the game, but also, he was looked at as the medicine that the doctor ordered for this Washington Wizards franchise that would elevate the franchise to new heights. And as you know, we all know, history has shown that didn't work out the way that they had hoped. But even more revealing about this entire situation is that we got to truly see what Jordan was like when it was when you peeled a few layers back. And with the Wizards not really panning out to really move forward as a franchise, even with Michael Jordan there, a lot of people were scratching their heads, but a lot of the pundits, a lot of the talking heads, protected Michael Jordan. They protected him from receiving any blame in regards to how the Wizards turned out under really what was mainly his leadership.
Shifted from what it was supposed to be, which was, the Wizards, weren't they really that high, that good of a team before that. Didn't have a whole lot of wins. So it was going to be like just young players getting, playing, getting, he was the number one pick. You had a lot of young guys. And then it changed from MJ coming out of retirement and got to make the playoffs, got to make MJ look good. Everything was just kind of different. What did you see, Jihadi?
I think a lot of players became.
Oh, and by the way, forgot to do this. Shout out to Basketball News. Basketball News, this is obviously their content, their video. I'm reacting to their video, but, the credit goes to them. They're the ones who have, who got this and set it up. And, Eaton, he has his guys up here doing their thing. So shout out to them. Appreciate them getting this out there to the world, and we'll keep rolling.
That was coming into their own the year before became just particular role players, more or less. And it was unwritten rule that's just how it was going to go. It was an unwritten rule. That's how it's going to go. You're a role player. And so when Kwame came into the mix, I didn't feel like it was really enough room for Kwame to do anything there. It really wasn't enough room for a lot of players. I mean, most players that was used to putting up buckets, they left. They had to go because it just wasn't enough balls. So to me, just the position alone was a tough position for Kwame to be in coming in, because it would have been a tough position for me.
Right.
It was a tough position for me. Once all the flair wore off, and so for Kwame, it had to be a tough position. Then he coming in at 17, and what people don't really understand is how everybody's saying, okay, Kwame bust this. People didn't see how Kwame handled himself.
Mm-hmm.
Most people in that position, we saw Kwame every day. We talked to Kwame every day. He was our friend. He was our guy. Even though he was like a younger brother. And, you could tell he was going through his ups and downs, but he didn't break.
Right.
He never broke. He never broke. And imagine you at that age coming in that situation. Would have you, a lot of people would have broke. And to me, I saw sometime MJ as a mentor in a mentor role with Kwame, and I saw sometime he got on his head. But it was more of just you had to really be able to understand Doug as a coach and his way. Doug, I never experienced nobody like Doug in his way because I'm not from that world.
Right.
And so a lot of things, how Doug did them, would kind of, affect me or make my blood boil a little bit, and I had to get used to it.
Right.
So if you're not used to that coming in, it could turn you off really fast.
I think that's a good point. I think that's a really good point. I think that one of the biggest problems in how coaching can affect players and affect their psyche is that, there are coaches who are stuck in their ways. There are coaches who aren't very versatile in how they coach. They don't have the ability to bring it down a notch when they realize that they're dealing with a player who has not been exposed to the same kinds of situations as your traditional player would be. And in Kwame's situation here, he literally was coming from high school, 17-year-old. Now, for anybody who has played, high school sports and been able to go up to collegiate sports, whether it be Division I, Division II, Division III, there's a distinct difference between the way you are coached in high school and the way you are coached in college. Now, if you've ever been a professional athlete, there's also another factor in that when you get to the professional level, there's another way that you are coached in the professional level. These are 3 different styles of coaching that are actually necessary for the development of a player. In high school, it's about, basically you're being rah-rahed by your coach, and you're going out there and you're really just, playing out there having fun. It's more it's more of the basics that you're being taught. You're not really getting into deep technique, philosophy, whether it be basketball, football, or whatever sport you may be playing. And when you get into the college level, and this is the college level, I believe, on for all sports, once you get to the college level, that was the level that I'd kind of ordained as the forged in fire level. And when it came to coaching, coaches on the collegiate level tore you down and rebuilt you in their image, rebuilt you in the program's image, to create kind of that hive mind mentality, where everyone is, being pushed to their limits and beyond, to find out who are the mentally tough, to kind of set the hierarchy of roles for players on the team. And I know it was that way in football, because when I went to Purdue, I had one of the most old school coaches you could think of in Joe Tiller, RIP to Joe Tiller. But I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about the philosophy of teamwork and coming together to achieve a greater goal, coming together to create this whole movement as a football team, for the glory of your university. All these traditions, all these different ways that you are kind of indoctrinated into that collegiate mind state. Those are all things that, you have to go through to a certain extent to prepare you for the professional level of sports, which on the professional level of sports, there is no tearing down. They're not rebuilding you. You are a built product that is now going to be fine-tuned to a special level of production. And that level of production is what is going to be expected. And they create the pressure to actually polish and better your craft through evaluation. The evaluation process is a daily thing. So you're being evaluated by your position coaches, by the scouts, by the general managers. They're watching your film. They're dissecting your film. They're dissecting, your strengths. They're looking at how to conceal your weaknesses, and you are elevated as a player into this new level of understanding of what your role on your team is really about. And you have to kind of go through that process in order to be able to have the foundation set so that you can thrive as a professional athlete. And it doesn't mean, and everybody's idea of what is successful is obviously subjective. So there will be different levels of success for every player, but there is an acute understanding across the board of what is expected, because you have been brought into a new level of understanding. And when you go from high school to professional, you miss a critical part. A critical part of that process is missed. So you have to be handled differently so that you can be brought into, you can slowly be brought into these new levels of understanding. And at 17, your brain isn't even developed enough to really grasp that. Hell, I grasped everything from the collegiate level by the time I was going into my second and third year. I grasped everything on the professional level by the time I was going into my second and third year. So it took time for me mentally, and this is somebody who went into the professional level of football at 23, this is a different time, or this is a time where even at 23, my preconceived notion of the professional level of football was different than what it actually was when I got there. So there was a retooling for me mentally and understanding how all this stuff works, and then being able to understand the language of it, and then being able to understand the speed of it, and being able to maintain consistent habits, which are, definitely important when you get to that level. But I think that you miss that when you don't you miss a lot. You're not able to actually reach that level when you skip one of the steps. And the collegiate level of the tear down and rebuild is what Kwame Brown missed.
I mean, there was a lot going on, and let's even back up a little bit, because when Kwame came out of the draft, do y'all remember? Because I was in there rehabbing, so I was there the whole time when everybody left, and then they was bringing guys in for the draft. And I remember they brought in all the top big men in the draft. They brought in Tyson Chandler, and they brought in Eddie Curry. They brought in Tyson Chandler twice. I'm there watching it the whole time. I watched those drafts, literally. And you could probably ask Tyson and Eddie Curry, and they'll tell you it wasn't even close with Kwame and them. It wasn't close. He was too strong with Tyson, and he was too quick for Eddie Curry, and he destroyed them all in the workouts. He was clearly the best big man in the draft. He was the number one pick. If those were the number one picks, the prospects who they brought in to work out, Kwame was the best out of that group.
Kwame destroyed in practice, though. He destroyed in practice.
He was killing.
He destroyed in practice.
And then Doug Collins happened. And this is the thing that I saw, and I talked about this before. I saw Doug Collins. It almost seemed like he had it in for Kwame and was trying to take his confidence. That's what I saw. But Tinez, tell me what you saw, what you remember from back those times.
I mean, I'm with you. I think I really believe Doug was only just going by what Mike wanted him to do. At the end of the day, Doug was there for Mike. So Mike brought him in to basically let Mike do whatever Mike needs to do. That's kind of how it was. Me personally, man, with Quan, man, I just think that they just, never really gave him that shot. Again, I'm like Jahadi. I have seen some time where Mike, talk to him in a way where giving him, instructions about what to do. And then I have been around where he has said some words to the young boy that I was like, damn. And I'm with Jahadi. He didn't break though. He didn't break. Mm-hmm. And I ain't gonna lie, at 17 years old, it'd have been hard for me, especially from how I was raised, to deal with somebody to talk to me like, the way they talk to him. I mean, I already know me. I probably got in a fight with him. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'd have been fighting. Hey,
so here you have guys who are speaking directly about the situation and the relationship with Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan, again, with all respect that is due to him, he has a place in this entire story as a villain, because to me, when you look at and when you listen to what these guys are saying, these are professionals. And I mean, you'll be out there on the field. That's like being in practice with Tom Brady. If you're in practice with Tom Brady and Tom Brady starts just ripping a rookie, that's one thing. You may not pay attention to it. It may not be a huge deal to you at the moment, but if a pattern of this starts to build up, and he just continues to rip this one rookie, continues to go after this one rookie, and coaches are going to be hesitant to step in and put an end to it because you're dealing with Tom Brady. This is probably one of the most, one of the fiercest competitors in all of sports. This is going to be a situation where players who do have status and influence within the team will be hesitant to step up and try and quell a situation where they think that a guy is going too far. Because it's one thing to put pressure on a young guy because you have that veteran status. It's one thing to put pressure on them and to try and see if you can squeeze more production out of them through that, because there's a way you can do that and it works. But there is a line. And it's a gray area, but I think a lot of times you'll see that line crossed in situations where it's not necessary, where there really was no need to all of a sudden get to that level. And I think that's where you're hearing these guys saying, hey, it was a young guy, a young 17-year-old player, and we knew that we felt like he was doing too much, but what could we say? The coach that was brought in here was brought in by Jordan. He was beholden to Jordan. And Jordan knew all of this. He's very self-aware. He understands who he is. He understands what he can do. So he took advantage of that, and he used it in any way he saw fit, which, hey, in a different landscape, as a player with the Bulls, that is something that works for the betterment of all of these veteran athletes, many of whom will have their legacy shaped by Jordan. That works, and it helps elevate those guys' level of play. But in this situation, dealing with a 17-year-old player can be destructive, can be very destructive if you go too far. I always talk about Blaine Gabbert. Because he has kind of been treated much in the same way as a guy who came into the NFL with the Jaguars as the number 3 overall pick, the youngest player in the NFL, who was already who was thrust into a situation where he was made a starter when he surely should not have been made a starter. And when the inevitable failure of his rookie year was complete for reasons that were beyond his control, people labeled him almost immediately. They labeled him as scared. They labeled him as a bust. They labeled him as a guy who is, who kind of like how you saw they did with Sam Darnold when he was on the sideline saying, man, I'm seeing ghosts. They labeled him as one of those guys. And it was so far from the truth, because if you were behind the veil and you actually saw what they were actually putting Blaine Gabbert through and having him with a quarterback's coach that had never been a quarterback's coach in his entire career of coaching, that was now a quarterback's coach for the youngest player in the NFL, who had all these expectations after they released David Garrard the week before the first week of the first game of the season, our quarterback who actually took us to the playoffs, who actually was very well liked in the city and very much looked up to by his peers on the team. This put him in a situation that applied so much pressure to him that there was no way that he was going to be successful. There were so many things, so many elements on that team that I literally was looking at it and saying, there's no way that Blaine is going to be able to overcome all these different things. He doesn't even know the playbook. He got to training camp with the last 3 days of training camp. So by week 3, he's the starter. This guy's not ready to be playing in the NFL yet. He's here, yes, he is. He has that. He has the ability, but he is not ready. Mentally, he has not been prepared to go out there and play, and they threw him out there anyway. And it severely hampered him in his career, because now, after his rookie season, the project was, how do we fix Blaine Gabbert? So you have a new coach come in, you have new offense coordinator, another completely new offense, and you're expecting that now this guy is going to take steps forward. It didn't work that way.